Hello, and welcome to another episode of Less Chatter, More Matter, the Communications Podcast. My name is Mel Loy. I'm recording this episode on the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people, who are the traditional custodians of Meanjin, Brisbane. And today is the final part of a 5-part episode series that I've been recording with my friend Prina Shah. And Prina has also been broadcasting this on her own podcast, which is Ways to Change the Workplace. So if you haven't tuned into any of the last few episodes, I really recommend you go back and listen to a few of those so you get the vibe for what we're talking about. We've covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about adapting your communication style for your team, giving and receiving feedback as a leader, having tough conversations as a leader, leading change. And today, I really do think we've saved the very best till last. It's our grand finale, so we thought, why not? What are our pet peeves when it comes to leadership, communication, and, because it's not just a whinge fest, what can you do about them? So you might notice some of these things that we talk about in your own work or maybe in the work of other leaders that you work with. It's not meant to be a hammer you over the head. It's really just about, hey, be self-aware that these are things that we've all done or probably all done at some point. And how do you fix them? Why does it happen? Why it's a problem? And how do you fix it, most importantly? So we talk about a bunch of stuff in this episode, including this topic that Prina brings up around professional ghosting. We talk about communication versus broadcasting and a whole lot of other things. Honestly, our lists are pretty long. We could have talked for a really, really long time, but we did cut it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's Prina Shah.
Hello and welcome to this episode of a podcast with myself, Prina Shah, and I'm a leadership and culture expert and human behavior expert as well, human behavior change expert, and I'm bringing that lens to this conversation, and I'm speaking to my brilliant friend Mel Loy, who is an expert in so many things. Mel, what are you an expert in?
Well, you'd think words, but also today, that could be challenging. Change comms is my area of expertise, and some of you are joining us on Prina's podcast, Ways to Change the Workplace, or my podcast, Less Chatter, More Matter. And so I bring a lens of communication, obviously, but also a background in behavioural science and change management. So we're bringing that lens to these conversations. And this is number 5 of our 5-part series on all things leadership and what we see, what we don't see, that we want to see more of. And this is the finale. So we are delving deep today, and it's going to be a fun one.
It is. Now, Mel sent me this topic a while ago, and I was like, yes, Mel, I've got a lot to say on this. Do you want to describe what the topic is?
It is our pet peeves when it comes to leadership.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them. We've had to narrow it down.
I've been preparing for this one because I've got like 4 or 5 pages of notes. I think I can go into it. But given that you are a comms expert, I really want to ask you about this one. I'm going to chuck you into the deep end of things. Yeah? Dear Mel, I have an issue with a couple of clients where I really need your advice. They have decided, this was all of last year, they took off the phone numbers of everyone's signatures. So from now on, you cannot phone anyone, right?
Wow.
I find that really challenging as an external person, purely because I'm all about the conversation, because an email ain't going to land. Internally, I had a conversation with the beautiful person, at the front of the desk who I meet each time. So she's the face of the organization, in my opinion. So she's the receptionist. And I asked her, what's this about? Blah, blah. I won't name her name. And she said it's really giving her a lot of annoyances as well, because these people don't have their phone numbers on the bottom. So when she goes to search on the online directory, staff directory, people have taken off their phone numbers there as well, Mel. What's happening and why is this happening? Talk to me.
Oh, honestly, I think it's a misguided attempt at efficiency. That's where I think this is coming from. People, and privacy probably as well.
Yeah.
Particularly if an organisation has ever had any issues with that before. Like I remember back in my corporate days, my phone number was on my emails and those sorts of things, but it was put out on a Facebook group. And because I was actually, my number and email address were on the website of the company as a media contact. So they've taken that as media, meaning advertising. So their whole thing was we need to pressure companies to stop advertising in these papers. Now, I had nothing to do with advertising. That was the brand and marketing department. I was corporate affairs. But they had pulled together this spreadsheet, put it on their Facebook group with 60,000 people on there or something. And myself and a colleague just started getting bombarded with text messages and emails and phone calls. And I was trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. It took me like a day or so to unravel this. But I mean, for that reason alone, sure, take your number off if that's going to be the way it's used. And so I can understand people being a bit gun shy about it. Yeah. But by the same token, unless you have a viable alternative like, like a book a call link on your signature, where you can actually book in time to have a phone call, then I agree it's not a great look from a customer service point of view that I can't reach my stakeholder in this business. Yeah. But also, it's going to annoy the crap out of the receptionist who now just becomes a switchboard every day. And it doesn't say much about the transparency and openness of your business either. And I think we mentioned this in another episode. Anything that sends a message is a form of communication. So taking phone numbers off your email, what kind of message does that send to people internally and externally about who you are as a company and your brand? And that's what I would be really thinking hard about. So either provide a viable alternative or put those numbers back on there.
Genius. Okay. The receptionist, I'm going to throw another one at you. It's still in the same vein of the topic that we're talking about. Phone numbers have gone, and the receptionist said to me, I hadn't even considered the privacy thing, and your experience is horrible, but a good, horrible case study of why this happens.
Lessons were learned.
Lessons learned a lot. The receptionist's opinion is that they've taken people's phone numbers off there because so many people are uncomfortable with having a freaking phone call now.
No, that doesn't surprise me. Look, I'm a little bit like that too, only because I'm so busy. So I'd rather somebody just text me and go, are you available? Because I will, if I am, absolutely, I'll call them. Cool. If not, I'll just say not right now, that sort of thing. So for me, it's just a politeness thing, but I do see that a lot, and I'm sure it's been spoken about at length about younger generations in particular, avoiding phone calls as much as they can, preferring text messages.
Yeah.
Again, you've got to balance that with, well, what's actually good for the business though? And in this case, I don't know whether it would be good for the business. So I would really be interested to unravel what are the outcomes they're trying to achieve by doing this.
Brilliant question. So what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve by doing this? I feel, and this is just my judgmental opinion because it's really frustrating me from both of these organizations, is that someone's just had this knee-jerk reaction and they've gone to like this, let's placate everyone and let's just remove phone numbers as a result situation. But interesting. So organizations, if you're listening and if you've done this, really consider why you've done this.
Yeah, but also tell us why. We'd love to know. We're genuinely curious.
Help us out.
Yeah, we'd love to know.
Brilliant.
Well, there we go. That's one. Taking phone numbers off.
Give me a pet peeve of yours. Let's discuss.
All right. One of my top 5 is communication versus broadcasting. And what I mean by this is I go into an organization and we're talking about the change comms. And one of the questions I ask is, how much do people already know about this?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, we mentioned it in a town hall 6 months ago, or it was in an email a few weeks ago. So they should all be aware. And yet you've broadcasted a message. That doesn't mean you've communicated a message. So there's no understanding. People haven't, it's not memorable. It hasn't sunk in. And when you consider that the amount of noise that we are getting every single day in our lives, it's ridiculous. Like the average person gets 121 emails a day. Times that by how many inboxes you might be managing, how many days a week, then text messages, Teams chats. I mean, the productivity that's lost by those workplace apps is huge. Social media content and messages, et cetera, et cetera. So we are being bombarded. And you think that something you mentioned off the cuff in a town hall 6 months ago is going to be remembered? Keep dreaming. It's not happening. And the other thing is too, yes, you might be aware of it because you're living and breathing it every day.
Yeah.
But your audience isn't. So they don't have that sense of context, but also nobody cares as much about your project as you do. Nobody cares. Sorry.
Yep.
Yep. So that's kind of the gripe. But I guess why it's a problem is what that does is when you just think you've ticked a box and you've communicated and you've actually broadcast, you're slowing down change. Makes it really hard to get through because people don't have the depth of understanding that you need. They don't have the change readiness that they need. They don't understand how, this work aligns to your strategy or your purposes of business. You're going to have poor engagement. So the fix is really think about your audience first and then tailor the approach to meet their needs, meet them where they're at. All good comms start with who, not with why. The why is different for everybody. But your who helps to direct, well, what's the best channel to reach those people? What's the best voice to use, most influential voice?
Yes.
What's the timing that's going to work best for them? How do we position this messaging with those people? All those things. So that's my pet peeve number one.
That's brilliant. And I'm sure I'm going to add to this. So once you really work out that, so consider the audience first and then meet them where they're at. So you've talked about the channel, you talked about the voice, you've talked about the time, and how to position the message. And, some parts of your workforce might be far more visual.
Yeah.
Some might be far more auditory. And so if you really consider it in this aspect, you can really, really target your messaging in the right way. And then another thing I'd add as well is when you target your messaging in this way, you could reuse this messaging as well. Eat, sleep, and repeat. Because, as they say with important communication, you have to communicate.
Repeat.
Communicate, right? But the more information you have in different various formats, the better it is for you to share your message and land your message to the different ears that we all have within the workplace, right?
100%. I always say repackage in 3 different ways because repetition is great, but after a while it becomes white noise if you're just saying the same thing in the same way.
Yeah.
So repackage the same message. Maybe it's an audio message. Maybe it's a graphic, as you talked about, or an email, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But the other part of communication, rather than broadcasting, is also checking people actually understand it. So again, what are the feedback loops that you're putting into this? How are you checking that comms landed, that people actually are aware and do actually understand? And asking a question like, do you understand this change? Most people are going to go, yep, because they're like, sure, whatever. Yeah, I totally do.
Yeah.
But then when you actually ask a proper question like, tell me what you think this change means to you, that's when you get to, oh, no, they've got completely the wrong end of the shtick here, or great, things have landed. Either way, you get really good information about what you keep doing, what you stop doing, what you change.
Perfect. So it's user testing early on from your comms perspective to see if that comms is actually firstly landing and number 2, being understood.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Now, Prina, I know that one of your pet peeves is professional ghosting.
Yes, it is.
Tell me all about it.
Professional ghosting. Mel, I am sure you've had this. I have had this for sure, right? So you email someone and then you just hear nothing back. Now, I really had this in my corporate days. As a consultant now, I don't really get it as much because I work with people who want to work with me. Corporate days, though, what the hell? And, I've been out of the workforce now for a similar time to you, actually, nearly 5-6 years. So I know why it happens, okay? So people are super busy. You've talked about this. I've talked about this. People can be avoidant. So, hey, I'll just ignore that email. It's not a priority. The ownership is unclear as well. It's like, I won't email. But professional ghosting kills me. Have you come across this first off?
Yeah, absolutely. And you still occasionally get it as a consultant where, especially when you do a proposal. And so you've had multiple conversations with people.
Oh, yeah.
You spend hours putting this proposal together and then silence.
Nothing. Yep.
And you follow up and you follow up. Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But yeah, absolutely. In the workplace, seen it before when you've asked for things and don't get it or whatever. So, yep, totally get it.
I just think it's freaking rude.
It can be, yeah. I think a couple of the other reasons why, one of the big ones is the messenger effect.
Tell me more.
So basically this is a bias that says who sends it matters more than what the content is itself. So if I don't like you, I don't know you, I don't trust you, there's a good chance I'm just not going to do what you want me to do. I'm just going to ignore it. Whereas if the same request and same message was sent from somebody that I like, and that I know and trust,
Okay.
I'll probably do it. So I think the messenger effect has a big part of that. But also when it comes to things like proposals, for example, maybe people are just shying away from it because, I don't want to let people know they're rejected,
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not going to
It's fine.
cry.
No. I'm a good girl. Yep.
Yeah. I'd rather just get some feedback on why you didn't select me so I can think about that and,
I'll move on.
But yes, I do think the messenger effect would have a big part of that as well.
Oh, great. That's fascinating. Um,
So how do we fix it, Prina?
how do we fix it?
How do we fix it?
I can get really anal. And I used to do this with my team. So, working in HR teams, my team could not afford not to respond. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's what happened because of the fact that, we had our own individual mailboxes. Then we had 2 other mailboxes that we were managing. And things slipped. That's the other reason as well.
Yeah.
So in that instance, especially for the service email mailboxes that we had, I set up we have to respond within 48 hours. If we don't, then we need to get back to people to say, hey, email received, but we're working on it, or we'll get back to you at whatever time, because you cannot leave people hanging, especially when you're a professional services team. That's one thing. Another thing as well, if you're finding this within the workplace, which I did with a couple of people, messenger effect, I think, was the issue now I've come to realize. I just walked up and had a conversation with them. So when you can, just have that conversation. And I guess the third part as well now is knowing about the messenger effect. Consider who actually sends that message.
Yes.
If it shouldn't be you. Unfortunately, we work in this hierarchical situation where the messenger effect is especially prevalent because we've created these levels of seniority, So someone else's voice might be far more important. So I could have then, back in the day, asked my manager to send that message instead of me. It would have completely landed differently.
Yeah. Or you recruit that person's manager to talk to them too.
Yeah.
Because again, if I don't know your manager, then why would I care? And be like, well, they're another team asking me to add to my workload. Why would I do that? The other thing is too, you make a good point about group mailboxes because, of course, internal comms, we always had 20 million of the bloody things. When it's everyone's job to monitor it, then it's nobody's job. So you can't just say, hey, that team needs to look after that mailbox. What's the system? So one owner a day, for example, you're on a roster system. Yeah. So, Mondays, Prina monitors the mailbox. Tuesdays, Mel does it. Wednesdays, Leanne does it, whoever.
Cool.
That way, it's that there's somebody who's actually responsible for it that day. You spread the load around, but you make sure it's done. Because it's like when you ask, when it's an entire family's job to take out the rubbish, the rubbish doesn't get taken out.
No. That is how you do. So what I used to do, going back to my corporate days, is there'd be one admin person looking at everything that's coming in, and then they'd allocate it to us based on the color code.
Like triaging sort of thing.
I'd be purple because it'd be more senior stuff, and then some other people who are working on change projects, the change stuff would be theirs, IR would be other people's. So yeah, that helped, but sometimes it didn't help when we got really busy as well. But we've got ideas of how to deal with it. Mel, I'm going to jump into another issue, similar concept in terms of the messenger effect. I used to have one manager in my corporate days who said, Prina, if it's a difficult message that you're emailing about, then just wait until the end of the day on Friday and then press send. This was a person who used to work in HR, and this was his advice. Okay.
Oh my.
What are your thoughts on that one?
That's a terrible piece of advice. Talk about avoidance, but also if you receive that thing last thing on a Friday, you are going to be stewing about it all weekend and come in on Monday completely pissed off or upset or angry or whatever. You've made it worse for yourself. You've made it so much worse. And also, if you have to send a bad message, why are you doing that by email? Why aren't you picking up the phone? Maybe because there's no phone numbers. But why aren't you having a conversation so that you can, have that opportunity to explain and get them to ask questions and those sorts of things?
Exactly.
Terrible piece of advice. Don't do that.
Don't do it. What not to do. So you remember also within the workplace, I always state that which in front of you is your teacher, the good stuff, but we especially learn from the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. That's really your big teacher there, isn't it?
100%. I think it's a Nelson Mandela quote. We don't win or we fail, we win or we learn. And that to me is huge. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that concept of, safe to fail,
Yeah.
because fail, it's one of those words, and I'm going off the beaten track a bit here, but
That's fine.
fail is one of those words that feels like so final.
Yeah.
But if you learned from that and you're able to apply that learning to something else, then it wasn't a failure. It was just an experiment. It was a learning. You move on. So yeah, anyway, that's a total tangent from me.
No. Okay. I'm going to work with you. So, one of your issues, one of your pet peeves, I know, is the urgency myth. Talk to me about the urgency myth. What is it, first off?
Oh, it is this idea that, well, everything is urgent. But the idea, it's urgent because it wasn't planned well in the first place. That's usually what happens. So lack of organization, lack of planning, a lack of understanding about what is urgent. What does that actually mean? And things are rarely urgent. For most of us, we are not saving babies. We are, there's a great saying, you're in PR, not ER. What is urgent? And, the thing is too, when you're constantly focusing on the urgent things and just putting out fires, basically, you can't focus on the strategic stuff, the big stuff that actually matters, because your work stops being about quality. It starts becoming about quantity and speed. And the result is you get people who are burned out, you get people who are really frustrated, who are totally disengaged. So what about you? Have you come across this?
I've been a culprit of this. Oh my gosh, I've been that bad person. Okay. We live and learn.
Story
okay?
time.
Story time. Working in corporate days. Of course, I thought I was frigging important and everything I sent out was urgent, So let's talk about HR days. Okay. So when I worked internally, let's talk about, so my team used to manage the performance and development cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Every organization has that. It's a fun thing that everybody loves. Not. Okay. And then we need to deploy all of our comms, all of our training, all of our upskilling just before the end of the financial year. The worst time of the frigging year to do it, because the whole of the organization are working on budget planning and strategic planning for the next financial year. They're also stressing out to close off this financial year, blah, 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 blah. And then here comes HR merrily along to say, oh, let me add this other mandatory, by the way, to do onto your plate now as well. Bad. The amount of feedback we got in relation to that and the amount of kickback we got as well was good learning. Okay, so case in point there. So I think sometimes you think in your own little echo chamber of HR or PR, whatever world we're working in, that this is the most important thing. But the lesson here I'm trying to state is that we need to consider the whole cycle of the workplace and what's happening across the whole organization. And the larger the organization, the tougher this is, I know. But we really need to try and align to the cycles of heavy peak and troughs.
That's a really good, no, it's such a good point. Thinking about, well, what else is going on in their worlds that, my thing is the least of their problems. It is the least thing they're worried about. It's the thing that's so nice to have, the thing that can get shoved, until later in the day or not at all. So I think from a fixing this problem perspective, as an organization, as a team, you really need to get clear on your criteria of what is urgent and why versus what's not urgent and why. Yeah. So as a team, is it urgent if people are going to be hurt or, damaged in some way? Absolutely, it's urgent. If it's a safety risk, 100,000%, that is urgent. If it is, you've got to do your performance review by the 30th of June, maybe that's not as urgent. No. When, by your criteria, actually the budget for the next year is an urgent piece of work, because without that, you don't get these things. Yeah. So I think it needs to align to A, people's safety, but B, well, what are the strategic priorities? Yes. If it aligns to a strategic priority, then yes, that's more urgent. But if it's not, or it hasn't got a deadline on it, like, a piece of equipment's going to be no longer supported as of a certain time, then why have you put a deadline on it? And what could you be spending your time on instead?
Yeah, I think another big lesson I learned as well is to really work well and really befriend. First of all, get to know my internal comms partner, because she was a gone. Oh my gosh. And one thing that she knew, which the rest of us didn't know, is the full gamut of stuff that was, being commsed out. So if I was trying to compete against other stuff, she'd say, Prina, good luck. That ain't going to happen. Reschedule your project to land in a couple of months' time instead. So even before I started my projects, I just used to check in with her and then allocate work around that, you know?
That's a huge benefit when I've worked in internal comms teams, which I do for most of my career, is you do get this helicopter view of the world. And, I've actually said this has happened, I swear. I had a person in HR come to me and go, we want to do the next engagement survey on X date. And I'm like, do you realize, and there's another team within your team that's aware of this, that we're actually kicking off a restructure on that same day, that same week. So that would be a terrible idea. But again, they were in the same team and they hadn't even connected the dots. So it's a nice place to be. But one thing I do want to tap into is the urgency thing. And I know one of your pet peeves is about the late night pings.
Oh,
Tell us about it.
someone's just had this brilliant idea, okay? And then they just send this email out or even sometimes messages out if we're really close, yeah? Boundaries. I mean, in Australia, we've got what's the legal
Right to
sentence?
disconnect.
Right to
Right to
disconnect.
disconnect, yeah.
Right? So we all have a right to disconnect after 9 to 5, whatever hours you work. But let me explain. So these late night pings sometimes happen because if, you're excited, you've just had this wonderful brain fart off an idea and you can't just stop to wait until Monday morning to send that message through, or it's poor planning. It's like, shit, man, I just forgot and now it's in my head and I've gone home with this, load in my head. Okay? So that's a big issue and it's really unfair to dump that onto other people. Have you come across this in your world?
Yes, and I have been a culprit.
Yeah, we all have. Yeah.
It is a little bit different, I think, when you've got an understanding with somebody. So, for example, April on my team, we ping each other at all hours, but we know we don't have to reply. It's just like, oh my God, I've had an idea, or I found this article or whatever, right? So there's no expectation of replying. I try not to do that with clients and my staff on a weekend. Like I do schedule emails to go out early on a Monday morning instead.
Can we just stop that? We can schedule emails, people.
We
Let's remember
can.
that. Let's use technology. Yeah,
That's it. I think you can also do a delay send on some texting apps too, can't you? Yeah. And if I do get super excited about something, I'll just write myself a note because I know I get excited and I'm like, I have to write down or I forget about my exciting idea.
Yeah.
But also sometimes that's good. It gives me a bit of an incubation period before I go tell anybody about my idea. And I'm like, that was crap. But yeah, like I have been a culprit. And again, I think this ties into that urgency piece as well, where every now and then I'll get a text message from someone going, I'm sorry to bother you, but. So I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but.
Yeah.
And you go, well, are you really that sorry if you're doing it? Why? Why?
I love that. So, but the trick around that is have the conversation on expectations. So so I know that even if you text me on a Friday afternoon, I don't have to respond to it. That's just you sharing your ideas. And the big lesson here, we've got technology at our hand. Yes, let's use it for good.
Yeah.
If you want to send that email, still send that email, but schedule it to land on a Monday morning or whatever time's appropriate, which is a work time. And we could do that with text messages as well, can't we?
100%. It's not hard. It's not hard. Just ask a millennial to help you. Well,
Or work it out yourself.
And that's it. Yep. AI will help. AI can do all sorts of things now. There's another one that I know is on your list. And these are another two pet peeves of mine. Hedging and weasel words and jargon.
Okay.
Blah. Tell me all about it.
Okay. Jargon. So TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, first off, within an organization. When you walk in, oh my gosh, it's a different language. And I feel when you're new to a workplace, it takes around 6 to 12 months to actually understand the lingo and to really fit into that. Okay. So jargon. And sometimes we just use jargon to make ourselves sound more important than we are. We don't need to do that. We really have to remember that there's a workforce that's super diverse, from an age perspective, from a background, race perspective as well. So plain English is the best way. And I know from a comms perspective, especially written comms, what's the age that we need to write to? Is there specific?
Yeah, so I mean, guidelines differ a little bit, but it's typically around the 14-year-old or grade 9 level. Yeah.
So imagine that we don't do that in the workplace. We don't write for, a 14-year-old's brain. And we really should. We should really simplify all of our messages. And then the other big bugbear I have is hedging and weasel words. And by that, I mean is words that don't give you a complete answer and they leave you hanging, right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about this, because I know this is an issue for you as well.
Gosh, yeah. So there's probably a couple of things there. One is you made a really good point that people often use jargon and big words because they think it makes them sound smarter. And we know that's actually the opposite of what is true. There is a great piece of research from 2009, and regular listeners in my show probably heard me talk about this before. But it's by a researcher called Daniel Oppenheimer. And the title of the paper was "The Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity." And the subtitle was "The Problem with Using Long Words Needlessly." And so what he did was he had an academic article written in its original academic language, and then a plain English version of that same article. And different groups were asked to read a different version. And then they were asked to rate how intelligent they thought the author was. The people who had the plain English version rated the perceived intelligence as much higher than those who had the academic version. And it's simply because they could understand it. You know, how does anybody know how smart you are if they can't understand you? It's not going to happen. And, you know, we live in a world where our audiences are so diverse. Everybody's got a different background. The story of literacy in our world is such a recent story. You know, we were never made to sit and read emails all day. No. We're at I think a literacy rate in Australia of about 99%, but of those, only about 15% are level 4 or 5 literacy. So that means that you can understand large words and read academic papers and those sorts of things. Most people are level 1 to level 3.
Okay.
That's it. So literacy, yes, I can read and write, but to what extent? And when you think about how diverse our audiences are internally and externally, it doesn't make sense to use big words. The other thing you mentioned is, the acronyms. I mean, I worked in organizations where they give you a big list of acronyms when they onboard you. Go, here you go, learn these. Cool. And again, plain English is useful. But the other thing you mentioned was weasel words. And we see this all the time. And it's honestly, I feel like it's a form of buck passing, It's trying to be vague because I don't want to be beholden to anything.
Yeah.
But people see through that and they look at you and go, what are you hiding?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to spin this? People aren't stupid. So the smartest thing you can do is be as concrete as possible, which builds confidence as well. There's a lot of research around concrete language and how that does build confidence in the messenger and the message. Okay. But also use plain language. Like you said, that level of about a 14-year-old, you will reach about 80% of your audience at that level. Wow. When you start to write more than that, it drops off really dramatically.
Okay. I'm going to ask you help for something else as well, because I see this a lot in the workplace. I'm throwing this one at you.
Ooh.
Using the active voice and using the passive voice.
Okay, so I have views. Yeah, so passive voice, please don't use it. It's used a lot in academia, but it's not very direct. It tends to make your sentences longer and more convoluted. So if you don't know, the formula for active voice is subject, verb, object. We used the computer, not the computer was used by us. Yeah. So straight away you can see one's much shorter, much more direct.
Yeah.
And once you start to recognize active and passive voice, it becomes a red flag everywhere it pops up where you read it.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple fix. Ask AI to fix it. Go through your writing, go find all the passive voice, rewrite it as active voice. Don't even have to do it yourself anymore. Yeah. But it is much more direct. It gets to the point. People are time poor. They don't have time to try and figure out what you're trying to say.
I know. It's just mumbo jumbo. And it has no ownership to it as well.
That's it.
It really bugs me. That kills me especially. So I've got some examples here. So
yes.
Because I got a cheat sheet because I really go off on one with many a time. I'm helping you. So a passive voice. A proposal will be written to clarify the project to the client. What the hell? When? What? How?
Yeah.
Versus, I will write a proposal to clarify the project to the client by the end of the week.
Yeah.
Own it, girl. Own it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, stressy teams. An intern will be hired to handle the excess workload. Thanks. My department will hire an intern to help with the excess workload by blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
How much better is that for
It's
me
so much
to
more
help you out?
personal too. Like it's
Yeah.
instead of an internal, like sounds like a robot.
Yeah. And then last example, the event details were finalized at the meeting last week versus we finalized the event details at the meeting last week and this is everything that we learned.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
I think a big part of what we're talking about here is writing like a human.
Yes.
You know, you wouldn't talk that way if you were having a conversation. Why do you think it's different if you're putting it in written word? And yes, of course, you need to be more careful in written stuff from a,
Yes.
you know, a leak risk and those sorts of things.
True.
But you wouldn't talk like that in real life. So why would you write like that? You're talking to human beings. Talk like a human.
There's a bill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump onto this one, okay? So while we're talking about our pet peeves, I know one of yours is the meeting madness culture. Loads of people have talked about this. Loads of people have written books about this. Tell me more about the meeting madness culture. What is it, first off?
It is when people spend more time in meetings than actually doing the work. So your calendar is always chockers from 8 in the morning till 6 p.m. at night. Maybe you're lucky if you've got a 15-minute pee break in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's almost a source of pride in that with some people. But you spend so much time in meetings and get loaded up with all this work, and then you have no time to do the work because you're always in meetings. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those, this meeting could have been an email type of scenarios. But what it means is, like, it happens because there's a lack of governance, first and foremost, around channels. So I did notice the other day, I can't remember who it was, I shared it on Instagram. One of the CEOs from a fairly big company has decided that he's of the same opinion. We're just in this meeting madness culture. So he no longer has meetings, and he's told the whole organization, we do not have meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays or something like that.
I saw that, yeah.
Yep. It's like, it's just wasting too much time. And he's absolutely right. There is so much we could do differently. And in terms of that, collaboration's important, all those sorts of things.
Yep.
But did you really have to meet for that? And I think, so it's the governance around your channels.
Yep.
Lack of clarity on the priorities and the actions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if you're just meeting for a progress update, then there's something wrong back
There's an
here
issue.
somewhere. Tell me your thoughts.
About meeting madness cultures, right? So often it's a result of indecision. I just don't know what to do, therefore I'm just going to drag Mel and her brain into the meeting, right? But then another thing I think people love to do is frigging pontificate. Blah, 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 blah. Just get on with it and make a decision as well. Sometimes sometimes people can overdo it from a meeting perspective and collaborate and over collaborate. Like, just make the frigging decision and have a meeting about that, perhaps. Then it'll be a richer conversation.
Yeah. Look, and as somebody with ADHD, you've lost me in the first 5 minutes if I can't see a point to this, and if you're just going over and over and over things again for the sake of, it's almost like if I repeat myself, then people will agree with me.
That's how some people use it.
You made your point.
Yep.
We heard it, but we don't agree with it. Just move on. Can we just get to why we're here?
I mean, in this conversation, we haven't talked about neurodiversity. We haven't talked about presenteeism as well. The more we get through, the more I'm going to switch off, And that all leads to a bad organizational culture as well, doesn't it?
100%. And I think there's something else we need to think about with this meeting culture too, is how much does it play into proximity bias? So this has been, proximity bias is something that has been much more, I guess, put in the spotlight since we've gone to a hybrid working model.
Yes.
Where the more time you spend visible to people, the more likely you are to get better jobs, better, like a promotion, be handed the better work, even if you're not as productive or as effective as a person who works fully remote. Wow. It's proximity. You're just seeing more. So how much of this is just because we want to show up and go, we're here, I'm busy, look at me, as opposed to just get it done?
Yeah, very performative if that's the case. You
Yes,
just wanna
yeah.
shine like the peacock. Yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
Goodness,
Another
there's so
one.
much we could say about that.
I'm getting towards the same kind of conversation. My next pet peeve, no owner and no next step. And this often happens in those crappy meetings that we just talked about. Have you come across this?
Oh, totally. And it's one of the things I do at the end of meetings, and I started being a lot more harsh, well, not harsh, I guess just more direct about it over the last few years, even before that, which is end of the meeting. Right, so who's doing what?
Yeah.
And then, no. Who's doing what? What are we actually doing? And when are we doing it by? And, that does then force people to actually think. Sometimes, though, it kicks off a whole other conversation. And you're like, oh, why am I here? But yeah, absolutely. Like if you've booked a meeting without a point in the first place, then of course it's just going to go around in circles, and then you just nothing changes. Nothing comes out of that.
Time. So then going back to that point, so how not to do that or how to avoid that is to, book a meeting, have a clear agenda and the outcome that you want, put those bullet points into your meeting invite. I had a brilliant manager I used to work with where he'd have that. Then, because we've got brilliant technology, we've got sexy rooms that we work in as well, he'll pull up the meeting agenda to keep us on track on the conversation. And then before the meeting even ends, so 15 minutes before the close of, our time, he'll say, okay, now we need to summarize. Action, who's going to take this on, what are we going to do as the next step, who needs to be consulted, who needs to be informed, all of the good stuff. But it's using that last 15 minutes really, really well and just chucking it back into agenda and then emailing all of us again. And off we went merrily, knowing what was, on my to-do list, knowing what was on Mel's to-do list, and knowing what's on April's to-do list.
Yep. You've raised a couple of other things there. One thing about having an agenda, it's great for people who might be more introverted.
Totally.
Because if you get everybody in a room and say, right, here's what we're talking about today, there's people who have more introverted personality types who need time to digest the information and then come back with questions.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, us extroverts are just processing out loud and not actually really contributing a lot to the conversation. So having that agenda gives everybody time, not just you, but gives different thinkers time to prepare and be able to contribute really well during the meeting because they've had that thinking time. I think another trick I've learned is have a safe word. That sounds, I know, a bit sexy, but it's not. Yeah. But as a team, yes, again, as a team, agree on a word that you're allowed to just shout out if things are going off track. So it's jellyfish, pineapple, koala, whatever it might be. And if that just, it's a bit funny. It makes people laugh and go, oh, yeah, okay. Put it on the parking lot, whatever, move on. But anybody can yell it out like jellyfish. Like, oh, yep, you're right. We've gone off track. Bring it back. So have a symbol. Some people have, I've seen, a little teddy bear and you get to throw it at somebody. Like,
I love it.
And again, like you said in one of the other episodes, you're going to have a trusting culture there. That's, some leaders would just lose their minds if you tried to do that. Yeah. But if you can have those little rituals or symbols or things that you agree on to help keep you on track, that's always helpful too. Because then it's not just the leader saying, stop, do this, do that. Everybody's giving you the feedback that you need to shut up.
Totally. Big lessons I've learned from you. So the agenda is really important for people who are especially the slower thinkers, the deep thinkers, because then they come prepared. And I'm telling you, those people come really frigging prepared to the meeting. That meeting is rich, so rich. I love the idea of having a safe word when things go off track as well. That's cool. Okay. Noted.
What's your safe word going to be, Priya?
I reckon pineapple.
It's got to be something quite visible that people can, it snaps them out of their chain of thought too.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I'm seeing a pineapple. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Mine would be wombat because I love wombats. Wombats. They're my favorite animal. Okay. Another one. I think we've got time for at least one more. And and I know this is a pet peeve of mine too, forwarding without framing.
Oh
Tell me all
my
about it.
gosh, forwarding without framing, that is just so passive aggressive. I know you're busy. I know you're super busy. And I get this sometimes from clients. I'm sure you get this as well. I'll just get an email forwarded to me. I'll be like, what do you want me to do with this? Do I create a course out of this? Is this a consulting engagement? Like, what's the point of this? Okay. So consider before you start to forward an email, why you're actually forwarding it. Give some context if you're forwarding the email as well, because the person receiving it will have no freaking idea why they're receiving it. So context is really, really important in this respect. What about you?
Oh, yes. For the love of God, just even just highlight the bit in the email below
Yeah.
that you want me to look at. But also, I think a really good lesson learned is be careful of what you're forwarding on. And would the people that you're like who wrote the original email trail 5 emails ago, be okay with you forwarding that? I've seen examples where somebody had replied to a request going, oh, like we've got nothing better to do. And ultimately that ended up in an email train that was sent back to the CEO.
Oh, shit.
Now, luckily he took it very humorously. But not everybody's going to have that good luck.
No.
Also, you might present yourself in one way to your immediate boss, but is that how you would want to present yourself to the CEO or somebody else as well? And then think about all the email signatures and everything else that are included on there, especially if it's an external, like from a privacy perspective. So do yourself a favor and do everybody else a favor. If you're going to forward something on, copy and paste it out of the original email and say, I received this from blah, blah. Here's what I think. What do you think? So don't just go FYI below.
Yes.
What do I do with that?
Oh my
Why are you even sending it to me if it's just an FYI?
Yeah, yeah. And remembering that all of these emails, all of the work stuff that you're doing at work actually belongs to work. So sometimes HR can actually open that can of worms and investigate the emails that you've been sending. And I've been on the other side of, the email screen to be the investigator, to look at these emails which have been forwarded. And sometimes crappy emails get forwarded just from a gossip perspective. The jungle drums, all of that kind of stuff. So be very, very mindful that this email is not private. It's not just yours. The company actually owns all of the data that you are inputting, all of the data that you're sending. The company owns this material, not you.
And not only that, think about it from a leak perspective. So I call it the Courier Mail test or the Daily Mail or the Sun. How would you feel if this email ended up in that newspaper? How would that look for you? What would your family think about you if they read that,
Well,
Yeah, but also remember, especially in Australia, even something you've written on a Post-it note is subject to freedom of information laws. So if there's ever an inquiry, which I've seen this happen as well, the Royal Commission into Banking, everything that people had ever written on any notebook, in any Word document, in any email, had to be surfaced and sent into a public inquiry. So you just got to be careful. You've got to be really careful. If it's too sensitive for an email, then it should be a conversation.
Boom. Definitely so.
Okay.
For me, anything now. That was brilliant. I don't have anything else to add. Excellent. Any other pet peeves? Have we missed anything?
Oh, look, there's probably one more, and I know you see this a lot because it's a basic one, but we see it all the time. It's not walking the talk.
Yeah.
So when leaders say one thing and then do another. And again, everything that sends a message is a form of communication. And when they do that, they show or they send a message that, the values of the business don't really matter, or they don't, really think that everybody should get along, or they're not really aligned with the other C-suite or whatever.
Yep.
And often I think it happens because they aren't aligned. They say yes to the boss, but then go and do their own thing.
Yeah.
They might not realize they're doing it either
Yeah.
all the time. Or they've just checked out. They're just going through the motions of managing, not really leading.
Yeah.
And it's a problem because, for example, if you are constantly cancelling or rescheduling your one-on-ones with your team,
Yeah.
that sends a message you don't care about them, that you don't value their time.
Yeah.
If you start, the company values about kindness or something, and then you're caught bitching about a colleague, what does that send as well? And the result is really poor engagement, really poor, often high turnover, but because people see this and think, well, A, that, this doesn't matter, actually, this doesn't matter. But also this person's not being held accountable for this either. So why should I even bother? What do you think? Have you seen it?
I have seen it so much. So not walking the talk, not practicing what you preach. And I often see this, Mel, when leaders are in a state of cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is when you have been given a message, for example, to deliver, but from the powers that be, but you don't believe in it yourself. So you're not going to practice what you preach now. So you have to get to a stage of cognitive resonance. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very negative, and your people are going to see that. Resentment is very, very palpable, So you really need to work out your funk, even if you disagree with the corporate message that is, and either go and learn more about it, have the conversation if you disagree with it, and then try and reframe your language to try and align with that messaging, okay? So you have to walk the talk and practice what you preach, ideally. And Mel, I think this is the hardest thing, especially for middle managers, because, they're the meat in the sandwich who actually have to make people happy beneath them and then keep people happy who they report to as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and like we talked about in previous episodes, they're often given the role of the messenger. So if you don't actually agree with what you've been asked to tell your team, then it's really hard for you to say it in a really genuine way or say it at all. And And so the fix is, what's the fix? Well, I think firstly accountability. If they're not being kept accountable, then who is? But sometimes they just need a bit of coaching to actually realize, again, like I said, they might not even be aware they're doing it.
Exactly.
And so actually just go, hey, when you said this the other day, do you realize that was different to what you said 2 weeks ago? Or, again, people are so busy. Maybe they didn't even know they were doing this. Yeah. Just got to have a conversation maybe.
Totally. And it's really important to, I think the final line in this one especially, is that if you're a leader, if people report to you, then every single message you're giving, even when you're not giving a message, is really freaking important because all eyes are on you there.
100%. Yep.
Check in on yourself and have a good peer network as well.
Oh, 100%. I think that's a really good point, Prina, around, we don't know everything. We never will. And having a coach, a mentor, a peer network, whatever that looks like for you, some sort of support mechanism where you can test your ideas and get feedback. That's important in any role, but definitely as a leader.
Totally. Mel, we've talked about so much. We've had many.
Oh my goodness.
What are the key takeaways from you? What really jumped out for you in this conversation?
Oh, yes. I think there's a couple of things you said about the late night peeing. I think because I said definitely I've been guilty of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have technology at our fingertips that we can use, like even when we do get super excited about something, it's okay.
Yes.
We can let it slide. But the professional ghosting thing, like until you mentioned that to me a little while ago, I hadn't even thought about it. And now I'm like, oh, it is everywhere. And I'm so curious to know about this phone number thing that you spoke about in the beginning. I so want to know the reasons why they thought that was a good idea.
I'm going to ask.
What about you?
Yeah. I love I'm quoting Mel, anything that sounds like a message is a form of communication. Please remember that, yeah? I love the urgency myth. You're in PR, not in ER. Hello, not everything's urgent.
Not saving babies.
No, I think we really need to check in on ourselves and our own self-importance often, because work can get carried away and it's easily done. I was like that. I've been there, done that, but we just need to take that pause and remember the world is still revolving.
And I think one of the things is too, and this goes back to sort of just a general lesson, the best way to learn is to teach. And for me, like for example, with communication, I became a much better communicator when I started teaching other people how to communicate. As a leader, you might become a better leader by mentoring and teaching others how to lead, because that's when you really have to think about, well, what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't, what are the lessons you've learned. So think about, maybe how you could pull that in as a way to get better at what you do. The best way to learn is to teach it.
Gold. On that, we conclude. Mel, it has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And you know what, Prina? I feel like we have enough stuff here to write a book. What do you think?
I'm up for that. I'm ready. I'm ready.
I'd love to know if our listeners would be keen. Maybe it's 50
Let me know.
leadership peeves and how to quash them. I don't know.
That'll be a good read, I tell you.
That's it. Well, listeners, let us know. Would you be interested? We've got no time, but we'd happily do it. So
We'll do.
we'll make it work. We'll make
Tell
it
us
work.
what you want, what you really, really want, listener.
Thanks, Spice Girls. All right, team.
Bye
Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.